So all those different concepts, they had created a script around those, which had really reinforced what the grammar was all about, which I found later when we did tests and testing those that grammar understanding. It really helped the fact that the students had created their own podcasts in these different areas. So that was one really fantastic benefit of creating the script.
Hi, I'm Hedvig from Gallery Teachers. Welcome to our channel. If you are an English teacher or considering becoming one, make sure that you subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for a weekly TEFL teaching tips.
I feel that we should be using podcasting in the languages classroom is because I know through personal experience that it's a really good way of being able to promote not only listening and speaking skills, but also for writing skills as well when you ask your students to write a script for their podcast. I've been podcasting since 2006, so I was a really early adopter. And what I did at the time was I asked the students if they could get themselves into small groups. So they were, let's say, 2 or 3 students per group. And I asked them to write a script based on some grammar that we had been doing in class over the previous 2 years or so. So as a result of that, they were able to make their own choices over the content. They were able to design the podcast episode in the way that they saw fit. So they got that idea around ownership of their script and their work, which was fantastic. We did all keep to the same format. So what I mean by that is we all had an introduction. They'd have to introduce the podcast episode, introducing themselves, saying hello, welcoming the listener to the episode. That was fantastic, I thought. And then the meat of the episode, the introduction, sorry, the presentation was when they then started to present about the content that they had then chosen. So it could be, for example, how to form the perfect tense in French. So they would then give some examples. They would describe, first of all, how to conjugate verbs using the perfect tense, how you have the subject pronoun, the auxiliary verb, the past participle, the fact that some verbs are regular, some verbs are irregular, the fact that some verbs, some perfect tense examples take a different auxiliary verb, so avoir and être, for example. So all those different concepts, they had created a script around those, which had really reinforced what the grammar was all about, which I found later when we did tests and testing those that grammar understanding. It really helped the fact that the students had created their own podcasts in these different areas. So that was one really fantastic benefit of creating the script. And then the actual recording and editing process, I asked them to make as many rehearsals as they needed to in order to practice the language, to make sure their delivery was good. And then when it actually came to the recording process, they were able to listen back as many times as they needed to. And I found that recording and editing process really helped them with their pronunciation, the fact they were hearing the same target language again and again and again, and the fact it was their own voices or their friends' voices, which really helped with their motivation as well. They also really liked the last section of the format, which we all agreed on, which was the quiz format, whereby they had to come up with, let's say, 5 questions in a quiz, which is a lot of fun. Each quiz was slightly different, but they all had the same need for a quiz, which is what we'd all agreed. So what they all did was they would ask a question based on the content they'd already covered in the presentation part of the podcast, and then they gave everyone, the listener, at least 5 seconds of listening of thinking time, so that the listener could then listen to what the question was, have a moment to think about what the answer was, and then hopefully the answer would pop in their head and then be vindicated by the podcaster or the student saying, and the answer of course is, and then giving the answer. So I thought that was very clever, giving some thinking time around that, and I thought that was a really fantastic way of using podcasting in an educational way. The students also loved the way in which you can publish your podcast to a real audience. So I can remember I was on Twitter at the time. Again, I was an early adopter on Twitter and getting tweets from people saying that they were in a different part of the UK, and they'd listened to our podcast and they really enjoyed it. I then passed on that feedback to the students who'd made that particular episode, and you could see that they were as pleased as punch. So that was really, really motivating, the way in which they had a real audience. So sometimes, with language lessons, for speaking practice in particular, all the lovely sayings that you said, or the presentations, the dialogues, they just sort of go off into the ether. But if you record them and you publish them to a real audience, not only can you use that from the point of view of the motivational factor of doing that, but also it gives a nice record, so you can show over time the progression of the speaking ability of your students by using podcasting. So are you agreeing with what I'm saying? Do you agree with the idea of podcasting? Is it something which you think is a good idea? Feel free to write the comments in the chat below here, and we'd love to hear from you. If you agree with the idea of podcasting, fantastic. If you've made a podcast, share the link with us in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. If you don't agree with the idea of podcasting, because you feel maybe it would take a lot of time to make a podcast and you can't devote that time in the classroom, in which case I would say maybe think about making a podcasting club where you have some really committed individuals who then receive the audio from the students, or they send it to you via, say, Vocaroo, etc. And then they are then dedicated editors or presenters in the podcast. It's a group effort. That's another way of doing that to save time. Or if you're annoyed about the fact that if you're all recording together in the same room, you're going to have some background noise. There's not a way around that. You have to maybe ask people to record at home, in maybe in a bedroom which has got a nice bed in it, which will be a soft sound. It will soften the sound. Or in a front room when you've got sofas and things like that, or armchairs, or carpet. The carpet's really important to soften the sound as well. Then you should get good quality audio, and also to play around with the microphone technique so that you're getting good quality audio and you're not breathing straight into the microphone. So those are a few ideas. If you agree, feel free to write a comment in the chat. Really encourage you to watch the masterclass, to learn step by step on how you can produce a podcast completely for free using Anchor.fm, which will not only allow you to record, edit, and host for free, but it will also allow your students to have lots of fun and to give them a real purpose for their speaking work in the languages classroom and outside of the languages classroom as well. And it's a great way of being able to build your community as well around the podcast. So good luck, and I really hope you have lots of happy podcasting adventures. Thanks, everyone.